Hi everybody, welcome to your practice. I'm Raquel. In today's practice, we're going to focus on understanding what is it that your pelvis is doing when you're doing forward folds. A very common mistake I see in the yoga room, especially with beginners and people that have very tight legs and hips, is that they start to do their forward folds with the spine and not with the hips. So today's practice is for us to really understand that hinging movement of the pelvis over the femurs so that the lower back and the rest of the spine don't have to do all of the forward folding. So today you're going to need 2 blocks. Grab one of your blocks and place the block in between the thighs. And give the block a little bit of a squeeze. And bring your hands to the tops of your pelvis. So, as you squeeze the block, using the inner thighs, try to bring the block forward in front of you towards the front of your mat. You're going to feel how the pelvis tucks in and your glutes engage a little bit. And then come all the way back up. And then squeezing the block, bring the block back behind you. Notice how the top of the pelvis moves forward and it feels like you're doing a little bit of a back bend. So now one more time. Squeeze the block with the inner thighs, try to bring the block forward, but this time from the waist down, so from where your hands down, don't move anything. And then reach the arms alongside of your body and not moving the pelvis, start to forward fold. And then you will see you're not going to go too far if you keep the pelvis where it is. So when you do this, it's basically thoracic spine, upper back rounding, which is not wrong, but it's not what we're doing today. And then you come all the way up. And now let's do the opposite. So squeeze the block with the inner thighs, bring the block back behind you. When you do that, there's an anterior tilt of the pelvis, and as you continue to bring the block back behind you, notice how the spine just follows, and it's way easier for you to forward fold. Way more than before. Good. And then slowly all the way up. We're going to do a few half sun salutations with this awareness of hugging the block and moving the block back when you forward fold. So step to the very top of your mat now. You have that other block right in front of you. And then inhale, arms to the sides and up. And as you exhale, even bend the knees, bring the blocks back behind you as the hands touch the block in front of you. Keep the knees bent, inhale, lengthen the spine. And then as you exhale, stay here for a moment and bring your right hand to the lower back. And then notice how the lower back is long, the sacrum is flat towards the ceiling. And then the more you bend the knees, the easier it is for you to hinge at the hips over the thighs. Now press the feet down, inhale, arms to the sides and all the way up. And as you exhale, bring your hands to the heart. 2 more like this, just moving. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, bend the knees. Try to bring the block back behind you, all the way back, hands to blocks. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Keep your knees bent for today. As you exhale, bow over the legs, hug the belly in. Inhale, arms to the sides and all the way up, folding the palms. And hands to heart. Inhale, arms up, last round. Exhale all the way down so the spine is long, hands to blocks. Inhale, you lengthen it even more. The sitting bones are reaching back towards the wall behind you. And then when you fold over, yes, the upper spine will round. Inhale, arms to the sides and all the way up as you fold the palms. And exhale, bring your hands to the heart. Release the hands, release the block. Now come to all fours, hands and knees. So we're still trying to keep the spine super long as we go through all of this hip hinging. So hands and knees, shoulders right above the wrist, curl your toes. Make sure that even the knees are just above the hips. And then look forward, even forward of your blocks. Press the hands down and imagine the sitting bones could touch the wall behind you. As you press the hands down and bring the sitting bones back. And then I'd like for you to notice that as you go back, at one point, your pelvis will round. And just notice when that happens. Just notice that. That means you went to a posterior tilt. And then you come forward again. 2 more rounds like this. You're reaching the sitting bones straight back. If you want, you can even place the right hand on the lower back for you to feel those vertebrae poking into your hand as you round. And you come forward. Just do one more hip hinging. But then this time as you hinge, I'd like for you to pause right at that moment when you notice the pelvis starts to tuck in a little bit. Take a big breath in there. And then as you exhale, you go all the way back into child's pose. As the sitting bones move towards the heels, it's okay if they don't touch. You fully allow the lower back to round. Another breath there. And as you inhale, come all the way back to center. Okay. Another thing I usually teach in my classes, which is pretty fun, is to do cat-cow only with the pelvis. I'm going to do that now. So press the hands down, hug the navel, hug the ribs. And you're going to move only your pelvis and your lower back, nothing else. It's pretty helpful to have a mirror to do this class, by the way. So inhale, just bring the sitting bones up and apart. Just the sitting bones and the lower back are moving. And then you tuck the pelvis in. And then notice how this is the same thing we did standing, but now in a different relationship to gravity. So the sitting bones go up and apart. That puts you into an anterior tilt of the pelvis, which is the most beneficial if you want to do your forward folds. And then when you bring the sitting bones together and then down towards the floor, that brings you to a posterior tilt and it rounds the lower back. And just do 2 more rounds, actually just 1 more going up. And then 1 more curling down. Now, when you curl down, stay down here. So you're kind of doing the scare cat part of the pelvis. The glutes are engaged. You are doing this posterior tilt. You're tucking the pelvis. And now, guys, keep the pelvis doing exactly what it is. Curl the toes. And then try to go to down dog with the pelvis tucked in. And just see what happens to your body. For most of us, you're not going to be able to go too far. It's okay if you want to walk your feet a little bit back to give yourself more space. But I'd like for you to feel, most of us are going to sense that the lower back is rounding. And then you're not getting that much length in your spine. So just notice that, how it feels to do a down dog with the pelvis tucking in. And then inhale, come forward to plank. And then bring your knees back down. Now let's do the opposite. Go ahead and do the cow pose with the pelvis, sitting bones up and apart. And exaggerate this so much that your belly is just like dropping towards the floor. Don't hug your navel for this. Let the belly be soft. You exaggerate now the anterior tilt of the pelvis. Press the hands down. Curl the toes if they aren't. And then keeping the pelvis as is, you bring the pelvis up and then all the way back. All you're thinking about here is having the fronts of the hips touch your thighs. And see how this feels compared to what you just did. Drive the hands down. Notice what your pelvis is doing. And then slowly come forward to plank and bring your knees back down. So let's see if we can bring even more containment to all of this. You do 1 cow with the pelvis and then 1 cat. And see if you can find neutral, but do a little bit more of the cow. Think about your navel, you know where your navel is. And 2 fingers above, 2 fingers below, hug it in and then knit the bottom ribs in. So that's your core sustaining you, containing you. And curl the toes, keep all of that, just bring the hips up. Awareness on the front of your body hugging in as you go back into down dog. And notice how this third down dog hopefully feels very different than the other 2. Your knees are bent. We're not dealing with the hamstrings today. We're keeping them bent so we understand what the pelvis needs to do. And then close your eyes for a moment and feel how in the lower back is long. It is not rounding. It is not back bending. It's just long. It is in its natural curve. And then inhale, plank. And bring your knees back down. Good. From here, grab one of your blocks and come up to standing. And one more time, let's place the block in between the thighs. Chair pose, our favorite. Bring the back of your right hand to your lower back and your other hand to the front of your ribs. Absolutely nothing is going to change in your spine as you do chair pose. So, you already know you need to hug the block a little bit for containment. And now also imagine there's a strap around the thighs, like this. And then you're pushing the outer thighs into the strap, but also squeezing the block. So see if you can do both at the same time. Take a breath. And then as you exhale, squeeze the block, press the outer thighs into the strap, and then slowly, there's a chair behind you, you're gonna sit on that chair, and then start to notice if you're rounding on the pelvis, or if you're exaggerating the anterior tilt. Notice where your tendency is. My tendency is to do a lot of this, to stick my butt out. So I know I need to keep things contained. And then once you feel like, okay, this is a good chair pose, bring your hands to your heart. And allow most of the weight to be on your heels. Lift the toes up, spread the toes. Bring those toes down. And then notice that from the pelvis, through the lower back, through the rest of the spine, your spine is long. The pelvis is not rounding. The pelvis is not doing anterior tilt, it's just long. And from here, press the feet down and come all the way up, and you release the hands. 2 more standing poses for us to really understand all this. Go ahead and place one of the blocks on the lowest setting towards the top right corner of your mat. And then the other block is going to be on the third height like this. The inside of the left foot is aligned with that block. You're going to assume a pyramid pose, legs. So hands to hips, lengthen up, just like we did before. One hand to the lower back, the other hand to the front ribs. All of this stays super long. Press the feet down, lengthen up through the spine. And then when you bow forward, it is your pelvis that is rolling over the thighs, slowly, slowly, slowly. And then notice with that back hand, when the lower back starts to stick up against your hand. And then today we're using the blocks to keep the length on the spine. So release the right hand to the block and the left hand to the hip. So you're gonna have the left thumb on the crease of the thigh and the hip, and the other 4 fingers to the outside of the left hip. And then the right hand presses down on the block, you lengthen your spine forward. Hug the navel, hug the ribs. And now since we're here, let's do a twist. Start to revolve to the left. And then you look up, and then the last bit of this, the left arm goes up. So in this shape, it's okay that the right hip goes down a little bit. Reach up through the top hand. Another inhale. And then you release that hand back down. Let's come up the same way we came in. So keep the length in the spine. Both of your hands to your hips. Press the feet down. And with a long spine, come all the way up. Very good. Step forward. And let's do the other side. Now it's the right foot that aligns with the blocks. Hands to hips. Lengthen up. That hand on the lower back. Other hand to the front of your ribs. Knitting the front ribs together. We lengthen the spine. And then as you start doing this movement, notice it always starts from the pelvis. Pelvis, pelvis, pelvis. And our spine is following the direction of the pelvis. Now the left hand touches the block. The right thumb on the right hip crease. All the other 4 fingers to the outer right hip. You can even encourage that right thigh to move back to the back of your mat. It's lengthening the spine. Hug the navel and the ribs, allow the left side of the pelvis to drop a little bit as you revolve yourself to the right, to revolved triangle pose. And then the right arm to the side and up towards the ceiling. Notice if your hips have moved to the right, like mine have. So you squeeze the inner thighs together and you reach the top of the right thigh back. Hug the navel, hug the ribs. Now that we have this rotation, because we have 2 blocks under the left hand, notice how the spine has a little bit more space to lengthen and to stay long through all of this sequence. One more inhale. And then as you exhale, release the hands to hips. You square the hips down towards the floor first. Both of your hands on your hips now. Keep the spine super long as you come all the way up. And then bend, step forward. Grab your 2 blocks. We're going to do a forward fold. So have the blocks on the 3rd height in front of your mat like this. More to the side of your mat. Nice wide stance with the legs. And then ever so slightly turn the toes in. And then hands to hips. For today, keep your knees bent. Just for today. Same thing we did. Back of the right hand to the lower back, the other hand to your ribs. You're going to keep the spine long as you forward fold. So press the feet down, knees are bent, you lengthen the spine. And then as you exhale, start from the hips. So you're hinging from the pelvis. Forward, 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 forward. And then slowly release the hands down to your blocks. Even if you can touch the floor, that's not what we're doing today. So use your blocks. If your hamstrings are tight, which for most people are, and this is a wonderful variation, so you can keep that spine super long. Press the hands down on the blocks, lengthen the spine forward. We've been doing this all sequence. And now very slowly, just like we did in our hip hinging, start to bend the elbows. And then notice that moment that the lower back starts to round as you fold forward. And then all the way down. And then allow your head to drop. Doesn't matter how far down you go. And then maybe for some of us it's hard to distinguish what is my lower back, what is the pelvis. Just trust the process. And then slowly come up. And go ahead and straighten your arms. And just for contrast, straighten your knees. Straighten your knees. Lengthen the spine again. And notice how for most of us, it's harder to forward fold when the legs are straight. Just notice that. And then you're going to keep the spine as long as possible, as long as you can. And then again, you notice when the lower back starts to round, maybe the hands touch the floor. If you need the blocks, by all means, keep the hands on the blocks. And chances are here, you're going to be feeling the backs of your leg way more than the back of your body. Now that we're here, bend only the left knee. And then straighten, bend only the right. Give the legs some juice. And then straighten. Both of your hands to the blocks. We're coming up same way we came in. Keep the spine long, keep the knees bent. Hands to hips. And then long spine, long spine, long spine. All the way up. And release. Nice. Toe heel the feet together. And let's do seated forward fold, which is always hard to teach because the pelvis is never doing the anterior tilts. So when I teach this in my classes, I always have people sit on 2 blocks or a bolster, even the ones that know they have long hamstrings and open legs. So have the 2 blocks like this next to each other towards the back of your mat. And then sit on it. And instead of having the legs straight, have your knees bent, right? Hands to the backs of the thighs, lengthen up. And if you want one more time, one hand on the lower back, one hand on the front of your ribs, you lengthen the spine. And then you start hinging forward. And as you start hinging, maybe the lower belly touches the thighs, maybe not. Doesn't matter. And then from here, release. The hands touch the ankles or maybe the tops of the feet. And now very slowly, imagine your feet were your blocks. So you lengthen the spine and then you forward fold, and now you do allow all of your spine to round down. And then maybe you start to slide those heels forward towards the front of the mat. It's about 2 more breaths. Now just allowing the back body to get longer. Another one. And then slowly release. Press the hands down and bring yourselves up. Nice. Just sit cross-legged for a moment. Last time. Right hand to the lower back, other hand to the front of your ribs. Feel the pelvis is in a slight anterior tilt, and you're lengthening the spine. And see if you can keep the spine nice and long throughout the whole of your day. Thank you so much for practicing. Namaste. Thank you so much for practicing. Did you enjoy this class? Let me know. Leave a comment. Leave a like. Leave a like.